Good morning. How are you doing there, William?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Do you prefer Will or William?
Will.
Will, it's a pleasure to meet you. So for those watching, my name is Robert Burns. I am the communications specialist with Thompson Child and Family Focus, and Will is a foster parent with Thompson. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background, could you?
Yeah, so I am a single foster parent in the Raleigh area, and I've been fostering for, like 10 months, I think, almost a year. And I have three placements. I have a 2, a 9, and an 18-year-old, all boys. And yeah, so yeah.
That's great. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to speak with you because we know that, a lot of people across the world, and of course North Carolina, are very interested, and in Florida, very interested in fostering, but maybe some people don't know what it takes. They don't know anything about the process. They might be on the fence. So we were hoping to have a conversation with you because you've been with Thompson, you've been fostering. Maybe you could shed a little bit of light on the experience. So we had a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
The first one that we had was, what originally made you decide to become a foster parent?
Yeah, so originally I was married, and my wife left, and she left, and we had been trying to have kids for years. And so going through that process, I still realized that I really wanted to be a dad. I've wanted to be a dad ever since I can remember. And so I looked into surrogacy, I looked into international adoption, I looked into adoption here, in the US, and all of those are very, very expensive. And so finally, I kind of found fostering. I didn't know if I was going to be able to foster as a single guy, but I did kind of start looking into fostering that way. That's kind of how I came to fostering. I came to fostering with the goal of adopting, but that kind of shifted as I went through some of the training.
We appreciate that answer. And I would imagine, and I don't know, but I would imagine that there might be other single guys out there who don't know, didn't know, or don't know, didn't know that you could become a foster parent, even as, like you said, a single guy. So that's a great answer, and we appreciate that. So how did you come to choose Thompson as your foster care provider of choice?
Yeah, so I was originally with I was talking to another foster care agency here in Raleigh, and I was coming up against a lot of kind of prejudice because I am a single guy, and I wasn't quite divorced yet. So I reached out to a nonprofit. I did what all good millennials do and got on Google
Mhm.
and was just looking for more foster care agencies. And I stumbled across an organization here in North Carolina called the Foster Family Alliance and called them, told them what was going on. They're a nonprofit that works to advocate for foster families. And so called them and they recommended me to Thompson's. So right after I got off the phone with them, I called my licensing worker um, and got all set up to start. So I chose Thompson after realizing that Thompson they put the kids first, and they put families first. So it was clear after I started working with Katrina, who's my licensing worker, Katrina Midget. It was very clear that they were very focused on kids and very focused on the families that the kids were a part of.
Okay. Okay. So it kind of became an easy decision once you learned a little bit more about Thompson, which is great. So tell me a little bit about the process of like kind of, for somebody who's never done it, like, well, is it going to take me 2 years, 3 years? How long is it going to take me? So what was the process like for you, and maybe how long did it take for you to become a licensed parent?
So it be it's a weird question because I started looking before the pandemic hit, and I was kind of in a holding pattern with the agency that I was with. So it
Mhm.
took me about 9 months from start to finish to get licensed, but only 3 of those months were with Thompson's. So once I kind of restarted the process, it didn't take very long at all. I think it was like 3 months to get into training and then to get all of the stuff done. I've heard it can take as long as 6 months, but it really depends on how motivated you are to get your paperwork in and get all the things done that you need to get done.
Yeah, and you might have had a little bit more experience because you're already going through or in the process of going through another agency, so you kind of already maybe knew a little bit about what to expect, right?
Um, so the thing is, I didn't really start with them other than kind of just commit to signing up for a class.
Gotcha.
Um, I had just been wanting to do it for so long and had done so much research that going through the application, I was able to complete the application in a day. And I think the application might be easier as a single person because I didn't have to work with my spouse to try and answer all the questions. It was really just about me and I could knock it all out right at the same time.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So as you were coming into Thompson, could you tell me about any sort of like resources or training that the Thompson team provided you with before you got your first placement?
I mean, I know I did the training for licensing, and that was incredibly helpful. I licensed as a family foster at first, and now I'm a therapeutic foster parent.
Mm.
Um, so prior to welcoming my first child, I mean, we did the all of the required trainings, so first aid, CPR, things like that. And there's a system called Relias that has a ton of training opportunities um, that was made available to me. I don't think I took advantage of any of them
Mhm.
prior to a placement, but I was licensed only for a couple of days, I think, before I got my first placement. Like I
Mhm.
hadn't even had the paper copy of my license before I had kids in my home.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to speak with you because I'm not a foster parent. I work with Thompson, but I'm not a parent. So to hear some of the detail that you put out there, like, you took CPR classes, some people may not realize that you don't just, fill out the form and the next day you have a kid in your custody. I mean,
Right.
there's classes and training and all that stuff, and there's great detail that you're given.
Yeah, and then you get a licensing, you have your licensing worker, and then you have a placement worker. And that placement worker is the person that I talk to most often. At least, especially in the beginning, it was probably every couple of days, just checking in, making sure. I never felt, even though I'm the sole adult in my home, I never felt like I was alone in the journey. I always felt like if something happened, I had somebody to call, I had somebody to text, to really just make sure that I had support.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because I was definitely gonna probably ask you a little bit about like what that experience was like. And thank you so much for sharing that. So if I could change gears a little bit, for the teens, I'm sorry, I don't even want to assume you've got teens, but for the child, what do you think the benefits of fostering, you know, them are? What's the benefits to the child?
Oof. I don't I don't think there are many benefits. Um, when you look at children who are coming into foster care, they're not coming into foster care because they're coming from a nice, warm, loving home. They're coming into care because they were neglected, their parents died. Something happened in their lives that caused this traumatic event of coming into foster care. So I think that's one of the misconceptions I had originally, that kids would be so grateful to be in foster care because all of a sudden they're out of this bad situation and now they might feel safe and loved. But that's not always the case. Um, they've been going through trauma sometimes their entire lives, and they're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old when they're coming to you. So I mean, I struggle to say that there's a benefit for them coming to a foster parent, but I mean, I think they do get to experience new things. They get to experience hopefully like an unconditional kind of love. They might get to go do things that their birth families didn't do with them, but to call it a benefit, I do struggle with using that, because it's the same as like when somebody says, "Oh, they're lucky to have you," and it's like, I see, no, because they're not lucky to have to be in foster care. They would be luckier if they got to be at home in a warm and loving family. I don't think them being in foster care makes them lucky.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that for you, your perspective is that, you know, you know, it's not a position that they've chosen, and it's also something that it's not ideal, but we're making the best out of what it is, and it can be beautiful in some ways, but you do recognize that, you know, the biological situation will probably be ideal, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you learn that in training, that biological connections are of vast importance, and to maintain those and to support those connections where you can.
Hmm.
So I don't want it to sound like it's a awful thing when you've got a placement that you just feel guilty or feel sad or something for them all the time. But I think for me, the benefits of foster care, um, they don't outweigh the trauma that it is to be in care. So because again, like they do get this new person. I had a placement who thought I was trying to replace his mom, and it was kind of cool to talk to him about me not replacing anybody, but becoming a bonus parent or a bonus adult, somebody, an additional person, and kind of try to make them feel special or okay with it in that sense, where it's like, no, I'm not your new dad. I'm a bonus dad. So, you have a mom, you have a dad, but now you've got a bonus dad too. You have another adult who loves you.
Yeah, I think that's a quite a compelling perspective, and it definitely shifts my perspective a little bit. I have a question for you that's, I would imagine it's kind of a nice segue, kind of related. So, what do you think, in your opinion, Will, does it take to become a foster parent, and or what do you think it takes to become a foster parent with Thompson? Because that might mean something different. So, if I could ask you again, what do you think it takes to become a foster parent in general?
I think it takes somebody who is willing to be self-aware, or willing to do that work. And um, there are things that these kids may or may not do that are going to push your buttons, and you might not even be aware of those buttons. So being willing to become more self-aware and to work on those things, like I didn't realize how big of a button it was to have a kid lie to me. Um, but that might be like a defense mechanism for them because they used to get in trouble and get hit or something when they would tell the truth. So lying might become a defense mechanism. So, just being self-aware enough or being able to be self-aware enough is what I think it takes. And to be persistent. Some of these kids are not going to open up to you right away or at all. They might push you away because they don't want to get hurt again. So just being able to be there for the kids, even when it's really difficult, I think is something that it takes.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite introspective. It's a lot of good stuff there. And I'm hearing the persistence, I'm hearing some degree of patience, understanding, and also, like you mentioned, really like being self-aware. Um, and those things probably don't come overnight either, those things will build on
No,
you.
no, and I think to be a foster parent with Thompson specifically, you need some sort of resilience because there are going to be placements that you're going to say yes to that you get your kind of hopes up with, and they just don't work out. So some sort of resilience is also required, I think. And it might not be specific to Thompson, but maybe any kind of private agency. Just because you say yes, the child's not your placement until they're in your home in one of your beds. So, I think I've said yes to 25, 30 placements, and I've had four.
Mm.
So just kind of being resilient there, I think, is important when it comes to fostering with an agency.
That makes a lot of sense, and thank you for that insight. I just have a couple more questions for you. If you could sum up your fostering experience with Thompson and maybe just use 3 words, how would you describe that experience? Like which words would you choose and why, basically?
Oh, 3 words. I think I would say supported, crazy, um, and maybe it's a hyphenate, but like a roller coaster.
Roller coaster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it is a roller coaster ride because there's really high highs, there's really low lows. Um, it's always very energetic and crazy. Uh, this is the quietest my house has been in a long time because all the kids are at daycare or school. Um, and I don't think I've ever not felt supported in the journey. Because that's kind of what it is. It's not something that you get your license, then all of a sudden you have kids and it's super static. Um, it's something that you're constantly learning, and it is a journey. And I've felt supported by the Thompson staff the entire way.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, if it is like you mentioned, if it is crazy, and if it is, just a degree of unpredictability, and you got the highs and the lows, to have that level of resounding support, which you've emphasized since the beginning of our conversation, I think that would probably give a lot of people out there, you know, a good deal of insight, and also a good deal of what's the word? You know, help them to feel supported in their decision to maybe become a foster parent, to know that a company like, like your experience, to know that a company like Thompson has offered that support with some of the unpredictability and the roller coaster piece of it all. And there's been a lot of learnings. So I actually think that kind of wraps up the questions that I had. Was there anything that you wanted to share that maybe I didn't ask about or touch on?
Yeah, so the only thing is, if you are considering being a foster parent, um, take the training. There's no real commitment until after you take the training. So if you think that it's something that you might want to do, or you have the spare room in your home and you have the spare, you have the capacity to love children who need love, then take the training. See if it's something that you would be willing um, to put out there. It's, you know, there's so many different ways to get involved in foster care. It doesn't have to be taking a child full time. It could be providing respite for current foster placements or foster children and foster parents who need a break. So you kind of get out of it what you can put into it, and every little bit helps. If you have a spare room and you're willing to take kids for a weekend or so, get licensed. You don't have to take children full time. You can help give foster parents much needed breaks. So yeah, I think that would be it. Just if you've got the interest, and if you've watched the video this far, hopefully you do, talk to a licensing specialist, take the training, and see if it's something you could do or be willing to do.
Honestly, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and for your insight. Will, we appreciate you on behalf of Thompson. Thank you once again, and hopefully, people out there they'll have a better understanding based off our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.